A small-town guy finds a lost woman in the woods. She turns out to be a millionaire escaping. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The night was darker than usual, the sky swollen with storm clouds that threatened to burst at any moment. In the woods outside a sleepy American town, silence was broken by the distant rumble of thunder and the crunch of hurried footsteps. A young woman, drenched from the rain, stumbled through the thick trees. Her breath came fast, her eyes wild with fear, as if she was not just lost, but running from something she could not yet name. Branches scratched her arms, mud clung to her shoes, and every shadow seemed to reach out to grab her. She whispered to herself, "Keep moving, just keep moving," as if those words alone could shield her from the unknown. Suddenly, her ankle twisted on a rock hidden under wet leaves. Pain shot up her leg and she cried out, collapsing onto the cold forest floor. Miles away, or so it felt, a pickup truck's headlights cut through the rain. Inside sat a young man, plain flannel shirt, calloused hands from years of working construction, his face weathered by sun and small-town struggles. His name was Daniel. He was used to long days that ended with the comfort of routine: feed the dog, heat a can of soup, fall asleep to the sound of the radio. But tonight, something pulled him off his usual path. As he drove along the dirt road skirting the woods, he noticed a faint glimmer of movement between the trees. He slowed, frowning, thinking perhaps it was a deer, but then he heard it, a sharp cry of pain carried by the wind. Without a second thought, Daniel pulled over, grabbed his flashlight from the glove compartment, and plunged into the rain-soaked forest. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, illuminating twisted roots and broken branches. "Hello? Is someone out here?" he called, his voice steady but urgent. No answer, only the sound of rain dripping from the canopy above. Then, just ahead, the light fell on a figure curled up near the base of a tree. Daniel hurried forward. The woman's face was pale, her hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes half closed from exhaustion. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She tried to speak but only managed a whisper, "Please, help." Her ankle was swelling fast, mud streaking her skin. And Daniel knew she could not walk on her own. He slid his arm under her shoulders, lifting her with surprising gentleness for a man of his build. She clung weakly to him, trembling from cold. "You are safe now," he said quietly, almost like a promise to himself as much as to her. Carrying her through the storm, he struggled back toward the road, every step heavy with mud but determined not to let her fall again. The truck door slammed shut against the rain as he set her inside. Her eyes met his for the first time under the flicker of the dashboard light. There was something in that look, fragile, frightened, but also guarded, as though she carried secrets she dared not reveal. Daniel did not press her with questions. He only turned the ignition, the old truck roaring to life, and drove toward the faint lights of his cabin on the edge of town. She closed her eyes, whispering so faintly he almost did not hear it. "Thank you." And Daniel, staring out at the road ahead, could not help but wonder, who exactly was this woman fate had thrown into his path tonight? Daniel's old truck rattled down the gravel road, its headlights cutting through sheets of rain. Beside him, the woman sat silently, clutching her injured ankle with one hand and holding onto the worn seat with the other. Water dripped from her clothes onto the rubber floor mat, pooling beneath her shoes. She looked out the window as if afraid to meet his eyes, as if the trees themselves might be chasing her. Daniel glanced at her, sensing the weight of fear she carried. "We are almost there," he said softly, his voice carrying a calm reassurance. "My place is not much, but it is warm and safe. I will take care of that ankle." She nodded without speaking. For a long stretch of road, only the sound of the windshield wipers filled the silence. Daniel respected her quiet. In small towns, people learned not to pry too soon. Strangers sometimes carried stories they were not ready to share. By the time he pulled into the driveway of his modest cabin, the storm had eased into a steady drizzle. The porch light flickered weakly, illuminating peeling paint on the wooden siding. Daniel parked, hurried around, and opened her door. She hesitated for a moment before letting him lift her again, his arms steady around her back. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of cedar and wood smoke. A patched couch faced an old brick fireplace where a few embers still glowed. The shelves were lined with hand tools, fishing gear, and a sketchbook half buried under yesterday's newspaper. Everything about the space spoke of a simple man who worked hard and lived quietly. Daniel eased her down onto the couch, then knelt to untie her muddy shoes. "I should check that ankle," he murmured. She flinched as his fingers brushed her skin, but his touch remained gentle, almost careful not to frighten her further. Her voice broke the silence at last, quiet and measured. "My name is Anna." She did not offer a last name. The way she said it carried hesitation, as though even those two syllables might reveal too much. Daniel nodded, accepting it without question. "I am Daniel," he replied. "You do not need to say anything else tonight, just rest. I will get you some ice and a bandage." As he moved into the small kitchen, Anna's eyes wandered around the cabin. She noticed the photograph on the mantel, a younger Daniel with a boyish smile, standing beside an older man in work boots, probably his father. Next to it, a small frame held a sketch of a barn drawn in pencil. The lines were uneven but tender, as though created in rare moments of quiet. She felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. She had grown up surrounded by chandeliers, marble staircases, and walls lined with priceless art. Yet here, in this humble home, there was something she had never felt before: authenticity. Daniel returned with a bowl of ice wrapped in a towel. He carefully placed it against her ankle, watching her wince. "It will hurt a little at first, but it will help with the swelling." Anna studied his face in the flickering firelight. There was no trace of suspicion or judgment in his eyes, only genuine concern. She almost forgot for a moment the chase, the fear, the wealth she was running from. "Why are you out here all alone?" Daniel asked finally, his tone curious but not pressing. She paused, then offered the safest answer she could. I just needed to get away for a while, to clear my head." He nodded slowly, as if he understood. "Sometimes the world gets heavy. I know that feeling." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. She saw in him a man used to carrying burdens without complaint. He saw in her someone who carried secrets too heavy for her frame. The rain tapped gently on the roof, and for the first time that night, Anna let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing against the couch. She was still hiding her truth, but here, in this cabin with Daniel, she felt a flicker of safety she had not known in a very long time. Morning light filtered through thin curtains, painting soft streaks across the small cabin. Anna blinked awake, her ankle throbbing less but still heavy with pain. She found herself wrapped in a quilt that smelled faintly of pine and wood smoke. For a moment, she simply listened to the distant bark of a dog outside, the clatter of pans in the kitchen, and Daniel humming under his breath, as though the world around him was steady and unshaken. When she sat up, she noticed the worn furniture, the mismatched mugs lined neatly on a shelf, and the single pair of boots by the door caked with mud from long days of labor. Everything was simple, even sparse. Yet it carried a strange dignity. Daniel appeared with 2 steaming mugs. "Coffee," he said, offering one to her. "It is not fancy, but it will warm you up." She accepted, fingers brushing his briefly, then glanced down at the chipped ceramic cup. It was far from the porcelain and gold-rimmed china she had grown used to, but somehow the warmth in her hands felt more real than anything she had sipped in glittering banquet halls. "Do you live here alone?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, my father passed a few years back. I stayed. Work comes and goes, construction, odd jobs. It is enough to keep the lights on." His words carried no bitterness, only matter-of-fact resilience. Anna's gaze softened, but she did not let it linger. "It must be hard sometimes," she said. Daniel gave a small smile. "Hard, yes, but it teaches you to value what you have." Anna looked around again. A cracked clock ticked steadily on the wall. The quilt on her lap had been patched more than once. Everything bore marks of use, of wear, of hands that had chosen repair over replacement. For her, raised in a world where broken things were thrown away without a second thought, it was a striking contrast. She set her cup down and whispered, almost to herself, "I am not used to this." Daniel glanced at her curiously. Not used to what? This kind of life, she admitted, catching herself too late. Simple. Quiet. It feels foreign to me. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her. You talk like someone who has seen a different world. Anna's heart skipped, but she forced a gentle smile. Maybe. Or maybe I just read too many books. For a while they shared silence, the kind that revealed more than words. Daniel's dog padded into the room, a scruffy mutt with kind eyes. He bounded toward Anna, tail wagging. She startled at first, then slowly reached out a hand. The dog pressed against her fingers, seeking affection. A small laugh escaped her lips, light and unguarded. Daniel watched, surprised at the softness in her expression. He likes you, he said. Anna stroked the dog's fur, her eyes shimmering with something Daniel could not name. I am not usually good with animals. But this one, he is gentle. The moment was fragile, but then her gaze drifted again to the cracked mug, the patched quilt, the humble cabin. She swallowed hard. For Daniel, this was ordinary life. For her, it was a reminder of how deep the gap between them truly was. Daniel sensed her distance. He leaned forward slightly, speaking with quiet conviction. Whatever you are running from, you do not have to explain. But I hope you will not look down on this life. It is all I know, and I give what I can. Anna met his eyes, her throat tightening. She wanted to say she did not look down on him, that his kindness had already given her more than wealth ever had. But the words caught, trapped by the secrets she still carried. Instead, she whispered, I am not used to people who give without asking for something in return. Daniel's expression softened. Then maybe you have been around the wrong people. The words lingered in the small room, heavier than the storm the night before. For the first time, Anna wondered if the distance between their worlds was not as wide as she thought, if maybe, in this humble cabin, she could find something her fortune had never given her. The fire in the old brick hearth crackled softly, filling the cabin with a glow that pushed back the gray of the rainy morning. Daniel moved about the kitchen with practiced ease, pulling a dented pot from the shelf and setting it on the stove. Anna watched from the couch, her injured ankle propped up on a cushion, curiosity flickering across her face. What are you making? She asked, her voice still delicate but warmer now. Daniel glanced over his shoulder with a small smile. Chicken soup. It is not much, but it helps on cold mornings. My mother used to make it whenever anyone was sick or hurt. Simple food, but it does the job. Anna tilted her head, watching as he chopped carrots and potatoes with steady hands. She had seen chefs in starched whites prepare 5-course meals under chandeliers, but there was something profoundly different in the way Daniel moved. No performance, no audience, just quiet care. The aroma began to fill the small cabin, and Anna felt her stomach stir. She had not realized how hungry she was until now. Daniel brought the steaming bowl to her, setting it carefully on the coffee table. Careful. It is hot, he warned gently. She lifted the spoon, tasted, and paused. It was simple, yes, but rich with warmth. The kind of flavor that came not from expensive ingredients, but from memory and sincerity. She smiled, surprising herself. This is good. Better than I expected. Daniel chuckled. Better than you expected, huh? I will take that as a compliment. Aldado. Their laughter mingled in the air, lightening the tension that had hung between them. For the first time since she stumbled into his life, Anna felt something loosen inside her chest, as though a weight she carried had lifted, if only for a moment. As she finished the soup, her eyes drifted again toward the mantel. The sketchbook, half buried under yesterday's newspaper, caught her attention. She leaned forward, curiosity overcoming hesitation. Do you draw? She asked. Daniel looked up from where he was tidying the kitchen. His expression shifted, a flicker of embarrassment crossing his features. A little. Nothing worth showing. But Anna had already reached for the sketchbook, pulling it gently into her lap. The cover was worn, the edges frayed from years of use. She opened it carefully, her fingers brushing the pencil marks inside. She found sketches of barns, fields, and simple objects, boots by the door, an old tractor, the dog curled up on the porch. Her breath caught at one page in particular. a drawing of a cabin under a wide sky, with smoke rising from the chimney. It looked almost like this very place, captured with a tenderness that words could not describe. "These are beautiful," she whispered. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, his ears tinged red. "They are just sketches. Helps me clear my head after a long day." Anna turned another page, finding a drawing of hands rough, calloused, holding a small flower. Something stirred deep inside her. Here was a man who built houses with his strength, but still found time to capture fragile things with gentleness. "You see the world differently," she said softly. "Not just what is there, but what it feels like." Daniel met her gaze, surprised by the depth in her words. For a moment, silence stretched between them, charged and fragile. He broke it gently. "You can keep looking if you want. Just do not laugh at the bad ones." She smiled, shaking her head. "I would never laugh." As the fire warmed the room, Anna kept turning the pages, each sketch revealing more of the man before her, not just his labor, but his dreams, his quiet way of finding beauty in things others might overlook. She realized, with a pang she could not explain, that no one in her world of wealth and glitter had ever shown her something this personal. She closed the sketchbook and set it carefully back on the table, her hands lingering on the cover. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Daniel gave a small nod, his eyes soft. "Thank you for seeing it." In that moment, the distance between their worlds felt smaller, bridged not by wealth or status, but by the simplest of things, a bowl of soup, a fire's glow, and a sketchbook filled with quiet truths. The rain outside had slowed to a steady drizzle, tapping gently against the windows of the cabin. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Anna sat with her ankle propped up, the quilt still wrapped around her shoulders, while Daniel tossed another log onto the embers. Sparks rose and faded, filling the silence with a quiet rhythm. She watched him work, the steady way his hands moved, the patience in his gestures. Finally, she broke the silence. "You did not have to do all of this for me. I was a stranger on the side of the road." Daniel turned, brushing soot from his hands. His expression was calm, almost certain. "A stranger is still a person who needs help. I could not just leave you there." Out here, storms do not forgive. And neither does the dark. His words carried a weight that reached deeper than simple kindness. Anna felt something stir in her chest, something she had not felt in years. Trust. She shifted, pulling the quilt tighter around her. "I do not know how I can repay you." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You do not need to repay me. Just focus on healing. That is enough." But Anna's eyes softened. She wanted to give something back, even if she could not reveal who she really was. She leaned forward slightly, choosing her words carefully. "Then at least let me make a promise. I will not forget this, and I will come back when the time is right." Daniel studied her for a moment, his gaze steady. He sensed there was more to her story, shadows she was not ready to share, but he respected her silence. "All right," he said finally. "Then I will make a promise too. Until you find your way back, I will make sure you are safe." The words hung in the air, more powerful than either of them expected. Anna felt her breath catch. "Safe," she repeated softly, as if testing the word on her tongue. In her world, safety had always been measured in bodyguards, locked gates, and towering walls. But here, with Daniel, it sounded different. It felt real. Their eyes lingered on each other, the silence charged, heavy with something unspoken. Daniel reached for the edge of the quilt to tuck it closer around her shoulders, his hand brushing against hers. The touch was brief, but it carried warmth that neither could ignore. Anna lowered her gaze quickly, her cheeks warming. She spoke in a whisper. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." He gave a small smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. "Do not thank me yet. I still need to teach you how to survive a small-town morning." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Breakfast at the diner," he explained. "It is the heart of this town. Coffee that could wake the dead, and pancakes big enough to feed a family of 4. If you can make it through that, you will survive anything." For the first time since she had stumbled into the woods, Anna laughed a soft, genuine sound that surprised even her. The heaviness that had weighed on her since the night before seemed to lift, if only for a moment. Daniel leaned back, watching her, and felt a quiet satisfaction. He did not know who she truly was, or why she had been out there alone in the storm. But he knew this much. He wanted to keep that laughter alive. The dog curled at Anna's feet, the fire crackled, and outside the rain finally gave way to the pale light of dawn. In the stillness, two promises had been spoken, one of gratitude, one of protection. Small promises, perhaps, but enough to draw them closer, step by step, across the wide gulf neither yet dared to name. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving the air sharp and clean, the kind of crispness that followed heavy rain. Daniel's old pickup rumbled down the road toward town. Beside him, Anna sat with her quilt folded neatly over her lap, her ankle carefully bandaged. She gazed out the window, taking in the endless stretch of farmland and faded barns that dotted the horizon. Daniel glanced at her with a grin. "Ready for that diner breakfast I promised?" Anna smiled faintly. "I think so." When they pulled into the small parking lot, the smell of fried bacon and fresh coffee drifted through the air. The diner was modest red vinyl booths, a bell that jingled each time the door opened, and a waitress who knew every customer by name. Daniel led her inside, guiding her gently to a booth near the window. As they settled in, the waitress, a woman with silver hair tied back in a bun, set down 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Morning, Daniel. Who is your friend?" she asked with a friendly but curious glance. Daniel smiled politely. "This is Anna. She is staying in town for a bit." Anna returned the smile, though her grip on the mug tightened slightly. She was not used to people noticing her without knowing her name, her status, her fortune. Here, she was simply Anna, and part of her found relief in that. They ordered pancakes and eggs, and for a while, the conversation flowed easily. Daniel talked about small-town traditions, the annual fair, and the quirks of neighbors who had known each other for decades. Anna listened, laughing quietly at his stories, feeling as though she were stepping into a life entirely different from her own. But the fragile peace did not last. From the corner of the diner, a radio crackled to life, the morning news drifting through the hum of voices. "Authorities are still searching for the missing heiress of Whitmore Enterprises," the announcer said. "She disappeared 2 nights ago after leaving a charity gala. Sources say her family is offering a substantial reward for information leading to her safe return." Anna froze. The fork slipped from her hand, clattering against the plate. Daniel noticed instantly, his brow furrowing. She kept her gaze down, her face pale. The waitress desked softly. "Can you imagine? A young woman with all that money, gone without a trace. Some folks say she ran away on her own. Others think it was foul play." A murmur rippled through the diner, customers shaking their heads, speculating in low voices. Daniel looked at Anna, suspicion flickering in his eyes, though he did not speak. Anna forced herself to pick up her fork again, her fingers trembling. She took a slow breath, trying to steady herself, but her mind raced. The name Whitmore carried weight. It was her name. She had tried to outrun it, but here it was, echoing from a crackling radio in a small-town diner. Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You all right?" She met his gaze briefly, then looked away. "Yes, just a little tired." He did not press further, but his eyes lingered on her longer than before. He noticed the way her hand shook as she lifted her coffee, the way her shoulders stiffened at every whispered comment around the diner. Something inside him stirred a question he was not sure he wanted to ask. When they finished their meal, Daniel paid at the counter, and together they stepped back into the bright morning light. Anna's heart pounded as if every person in that diner had seen through her disguise. She kept her head down, clutching the quilt tighter around her shoulders. Daniel unlocked the truck, holding the door for her. But before she climbed in, he said quietly, almost to himself, "It is strange. You look like someone who has never belonged here. And yet, you fit in better than you think." Anna's breath caught, but she forced a smile. "Maybe I am just good at pretending." Daniel said nothing more, but as he started the engine, the unspoken tension filled the cab. The radio had planted a seed of doubt, and though Anna prayed it would fade, she knew the truth was drawing closer, waiting for the moment it could no longer be hidden. The drive back from the diner was quiet. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, but his mind replayed the way Anna had reacted when the news report mentioned the missing heiress. He did not ask questions, yet doubt pressed at the edges of his thoughts. Anna stared out the window, her reflection pale in the glass. Each mile felt heavier, as though the forest and fields themselves were closing in, reminding her that secrets could not stay buried forever. She clenched her hands in her lap, praying that Daniel would not connect the pieces. But fate had its own timing. As they turned onto the narrow road leading to Daniel's cabin, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. A black SUV sped up behind them, closing the distance too quickly. Daniel frowned, his grip tightening on the wheel. That is strange. We do not get many cars out here. The SUV swerved, forcing him to pull over. Before he could react, two men stepped out, their suits drenched from the wet ground, their faces sharp with determination. One of them shouted, "Miss Whitmore, please, come with us. Your family has been worried sick." Daniel's head snapped toward Anna. The name struck like thunder in the quiet cab. Anna's breath caught, her face drained of color. She tried to open the door, but Daniel reached for her arm, stunned. "Whitmore, that is you?" The men moved closer, one pulling out a badge. "We are with the family's security detail. We have been searching non-stop." Anna's chest heaved as she whispered, "Yes, it is true." Her eyes glistened, torn between fear and shame. "I am Anna Whitmore." The words hung in the air like a stone dropping into deep water. Daniel released her arm slowly, disbelief written across his face. The woman he had carried from the storm, the woman who ate soup by his fire and laughed over small-town stories, was not just a stranger. She was the missing millionaire the whole country was searching for. Anna looked at him desperately, her voice breaking. "I did not want you to know like this. I wanted you to see me. Not my name, not my money, just me." The men approached the truck, urging her to step out. Daniel sat frozen, the truth crashing over him like the storm that had brought her into his life. Nothing would ever be the same now. The silence in the cab stretched, heavy and suffocating. Anna sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap, while Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on the two men outside the truck. Their suits were soaked through, their polished shoes sinking into the mud, but their stance was unshaken. One of them opened the back door of the SUV and called again. "Miss Whitmore, please. Your family insists you come home immediately." Anna swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she turned to Daniel. "Please, do not look at me differently. I am still the same woman you carried out of the storm." But Daniel could not answer. His chest tightened with conflict. The woman who had seemed so real, so human in his cabin, was suddenly revealed as someone from a world he could never touch. A Whitmore. A name spoken only in whispers in his small town. A name tied to skyscrapers, private jets, and fortunes beyond imagining. Word spread quickly. By the time they reached the edge of town, the news vans had already arrived, cameras flashing like lightning as they tried to capture every angle. Reporters swarmed the truck, shouting questions. "Miss Whitmore, why did you disappear? Who is this man with you? Is this your secret lover?" Daniel's face burned as microphones shoved toward him. He was no longer invisible, no longer just a man from a quiet cabin. Now he was the subject of speculation, ridicule, and judgment. One reporter sneered, "Is it true you rescued her? Or are you just another small-town dreamer hoping to cash in on her fortune?" Anna's eyes filled with fire. She pushed the door open, stepping out despite her injured ankle. Cameras clicked furiously as she steadied herself on the truck. "Enough," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "This man is not here for my money. He is the reason I am alive today. When I was lost, when no one else was there, he found me. He carried me through the storm when I could not walk. He gave me safety without asking for anything in return." The crowd of reporters quieted, stunned by her defiance. Anna looked back at Daniel, her voice softer but filled with conviction. "Do not let them twist this. You are more of a man than anyone I have ever known in my world of wealth and power. They only see your clothes, your truck, your cabin. But I see your strength, your kindness, your dignity." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to believe her words, but the eyes of the crowd burned holes into him, branding him as unworthy. He shifted uncomfortably, the weight of their judgment pressing down. Yet Anna stepped closer, ignoring the cameras. She reached for his hand and held it firmly, raising it for all to see. "This man is not a scandal. He is my truth." "Oh!" The gasps of the crowd echoed, cameras snapping wildly. Reporters shouted new questions, but Anna did not flinch. For the first time, she was no longer hiding, no longer running. She stood openly by Daniel's side, daring anyone to challenge the choice she had made. The crowd pressed closer, their voices rising in a frenzy of questions. Cameras flashed like a storm of lightning, but Anna's hand remained firmly locked with Daniel's. Her declaration hung in the air, defiant and unshaken. Daniel felt the warmth of her grip, but doubt still lingered in his chest. He leaned toward her, speaking low so only she could hear. "Anna, this is not your world. You will have to go back with them. You belong to a life I cannot give you." She turned her face toward him, her eyes steady. "Do not tell me where I belong. For the first time in my life, I am choosing for myself, and I choose you." Gasps rippled through the reporters. Some scoffed, others scribbled furiously in their notepads, eager to twist the story. But Anna stood taller, her injured ankle barely holding her weight, her voice unwavering. "You can write whatever you want. You can mock, you can question, but you will not change the truth. This man saved me when I was nothing but a frightened woman lost in the woods. That is what matters, not his bank account, not his cabin, not his truck." Daniel's heart pounded. He had never been the center of attention, never wanted it, yet here he was, pulled into the harsh light of her world. He looked into Anna's eyes and saw no hesitation, only fierce loyalty. Slowly, he nodded. The reporters erupted again, but this time Anna raised her other hand, silencing them. "There will be no reward," she announced firmly. "Do not insult him by suggesting it. He asked for nothing, and he will receive nothing except my gratitude and my love." Daniel's breath caught at her final words. Love. Spoken openly, without fear, before flashing cameras and skeptical eyes. In that moment, the memory of the sketchbook came rushing back to him, the fragile pencil drawings of barns, fields, and hands holding a flower. He had always captured quiet truths on paper, never believing anyone would see them. Yet here Anna was, holding his truth up to the world, unashamed. The security men exchanged glances, uncertain of how to proceed. Finally, one of them stepped forward and said quietly, "Miss Whitmore, your family will not be pleased, but it is your choice." Anna squeezed Daniel's hand tighter. "Yes, it is my choice." Daniel finally found his voice. "Then I will stand with you, no matter what comes." The cameras clicked furiously, but neither of them noticed anymore. In the middle of the chaos, they had carved out something untouchable. Back at the cabin that night, away from the noise, Anna sat by the fire once more. She reached for the sketchbook, her fingers brushing over the drawing of the small cabin under the wide sky. She held it against her chest, her eyes shining with quiet certainty. "Do you see?" she whispered. "This was never just your dream. It is ours now." Daniel sat beside her, his arm wrapping gently around her shoulders. Outside, the woods stood silent under the stars, no longer a place of fear, but the place where two worlds had collided and chosen to remain together. And in that quiet cabin, lit by firelight and guarded by promises, love and justice found their home.